Double standards at CBC. I'm Brian Lilley with TheRebel.media. Well, Evan Solomon is out at CBC. Given that my views on the state broadcaster are well known, you would think that would make me happy, correct? No, not really. After moving slowly on Jian Ghomeshi and his, should we say, more serious problem of enjoying beating up women for his own sexual pleasure, and then after ignoring Amanda Lang taking fees to speak at events put on or sponsored by companies she was actually covering as a business reporter, CBC moved with lightning speed to fire Evan Solomon. Why? As far as I'm concerned, that question's still open, but according to an investigation by the Toronto Star, Solomon was guilty of helping a friend arrange art deals and then taking a commission. CBC fired him for what they say was a breach of their journalistics and ethics policy, a claim made by CBC President Hubert Lacroix on his own network.
Well, actually yesterday is that through information that we got on Monday and additional information and details that came out of our own review, well, we know there was a breach of our conflict interest and ethics policies, of our journalistic standards, and we moved extremely quickly.
Now, CBC's policy says that staff cannot use their position to enrich themselves. I'm not sure Solomon's actually guilty of that. According to the Star story, Evan Solomon had two clients that he brought to Toronto art dealer Bruce Bailey. The first client mentioned is former Bank of Canada Governor, now Bank of England Governor, Mark Carney. Now, from what I recall, Carney and Solomon are friends. They were neighbors when Carney still lived in Ottawa. I believe they would go out running together. And when you live in a town like Ottawa long enough, you're going to know someone in government or politics. And what most people try and do is set aside their politics and their day job. And when they're off the clock, just treat the other person like any other neighbor or friend. So more than a guest on Solomon's show, Carney was a buddy. Now, the Star makes an allusion to that, but they play up the fact that Carney appeared on Power and Politics. The other client was Jim Balsillie. He was the co-founder, or is co-founder, of BlackBerry. He declined several interview requests by Solomon, but did eventually meet with him, where art was discussed, where he was introduced to Bailey, and from there, purchases were later made. If there's more to this story, then neither CBC nor the Star are letting it out. And based on what I have seen so far, I don't see why Solomon was fired. Maybe something more will come out, but right now, I can say that he wasn't being paid to trade political secrets. He wasn't selling access. He wasn't padding his expenses. He was doing something outside of his day job, and while he appears to have been paid fairly well for it, up to $300,000 in commissions, he also struck out often, according to the Star. In one discussion of why CBC moved so quickly, two of their employees on air noted that, well, this was post-Ghomeshi period, after the Rubin report. I'm sorry, setting up side art deals is not the same as closed-fisted punching women for your own perverted gratification. They should never be mentioned together, and yet I can tell you that's all the chatter in official Ottawa. Now let's look at how CBC has treated others caught with misdeeds. We'll start with CBC President Hubert Lacroix. Lacroix was hired in 2007 to take the top job at the state broadcaster. It comes with an annual salary of between $350,000 and $421,000, plus an annual six-figure bonus and other perks such as a car allowance and club memberships. But the job is based in Ottawa, and Lacroix couldn't possibly live in the nation's capital. He wanted to stay in Montreal. So he negotiated monthly living allowance, $1,500 per month after taxes. That's $18,000 a year, all to pay for the bother of going to Ottawa. See, CBC policy doesn't allow for the president to be reimbursed for travel to Ottawa because he's supposed to live here. But then after getting the bonus agreed to, Lacroix promptly started billing for travel to Ottawa, and over the next several years, dinged taxpayers for $29,678.11. He then quietly paid it back and leaked the news when he knew that I was about to do a story on it. And he still refuses to answer real questions about this, but he gets to keep his job. Then there's David Suzuki, Saint Suzuki the Untouchable. When CBC brought out their new speaker's fee policy, it clearly didn't apply to Suzuki because he continues to take paid gigs. He's even currently out on a national tour, his Blue Dot Tour, to defeat the Harper government. There's no doubt that Suzuki has used his position as host of The Nature of Things, a TV show he's hosted since 1979, to enrich himself. And I mean beyond the money he makes from doing the show. How else to explain his 4 homes, including his primary residence, a mansion in Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood? It's worth about $8.2 million. He owns another home in the neighborhood worth $1 million. He also owns a nice little getaway on Quadra Island. That's valued at $1.1 million. He's part owner of an island along with an oil company. He had to make that money somehow, right? It wasn't from his academic years, I'm sure. Well, his speaking fees are well above average. That's thanks to his CBC gig. In 2008, he was charging Mount Royal University in Calgary $30,000 plus expenses for a speech. In 2013, he charged Ontario Hydro $34,000 for a speech. This was several years after I sat in a news conference and listened to him say he was giving up flying and traveling all for the good of the planet to reduce his carbon footprint. I guess that $34,000 was too alluring. And then there was the speech at John Abbott College in Montreal. You may remember that one, the one with the creepy requests for young women to be his guides around campus. He was paid $41,640 for that speech. I'd say he's been using his position to enrich himself, and he's been doing it for years. But here's the real kicker. Suzuki and his foundation squeezing money out of CBC to sponsor a party in his honor, and CBC agreeing to it. In addition to a hefty sponsorship fee, the foundation asked CBC to provide the following back in 2010 for a gala honoring Suzuki, that they would get 2 weeks of online ad banners with click-through to the David Suzuki Foundation website for DSF or gala with timing dependent on promotional needs. They would also get 1 week of online banner ads promoting David's 75th birthday and the David Suzuki Foundation, TV promotion in English and in French. And then, well, they would also get this, 1 week of ads or PSAs run on all channels on the David Suzuki Foundation or gala, depending on promotional needs. That's worth an awful lot, this in addition to cash. Later on, they would get promotional ads for David Suzuki Foundation to run during the airing of Force of Nature on the main network. They would get a promotional ad or PSA for the David Suzuki Foundation on the week of David's birthday. But here's the real stinker part. A feature interview on Q, feature interview on The Hour and The National, syndication interviews on radio morning shows. That's pretty much every morning radio show across the country, either on the week of September 13th or September 20th. Review of movie and book on various media platforms. Review on gala red carpet, or presence on gala red carpet. Possible joint online project around David's birthday to engage public to take 1 million acts of green. That is negotiating editorial content. And David Suzuki's been using his gig on CBC to boost outside opportunities for himself for years, enriching himself, enriching his foundation. Do you really think he would get more than $40,000 a speech if he'd remained a simple academic with a specialty in fruit flies? Do you think there would be a red carpet gala in his honor with all the glitz and glamour and CBC promotion and cash without his TV show? But Suzuki can do no wrong. Even when he cut a television commercial supporting Ontario Liberal Premier Dalton McGuinty, he was able to keep his job. See, the CBC has different standards, and we just learned that Evan Solomon is paid a price for not being Suzuki or Lacroix. Instead, he was a TV host, and a good one at that, who showed some outside entrepreneurial spirit. And you can't have that at CBC.